What is going on, guys? In today's video I will show you the top 7 best builds in last Epoch Season 3. The new update is packed with massive changes, so features like the new items, new meta balance and much more. If you are wondering what are the strongest builds right now, or looking for your next character to grind with, then this video is for you. I'll break down what each build does, what makes it special, how it plays, and why it is powerful in Season 3. Also, if you're interested in buying other PC or console games with 50 or 70% discount, then check out Instant Gaming. For example, I want to buy Elden Ring, so we just click on Add to Cart, then click Pay, then input our details and pay. After payment is complete, we will receive activation key, then copy and paste the key in, and it's that simple. So what are you waiting for? Click my link in the description and check out Instant Gaming for yourself. So let's kick things off with an absolute classic, the Warpath Void Knight, also known as the spin to win build. If you played action RPGs before, then you already know the appeal. You spin through the battlefield, shredding everything in their sight, while becoming an unstoppable storm of destruction. What makes Warpath so satisfying is how it ramps up. The longer you spin, the bigger your AoE grows, until you cover the most of the screen in the purple void energy. The gameplay loop is simple but addictive. Stay spinning, keep moving, and watch your damage climb higher and higher. The secret here comes from the Void Well passive and stacking extra mana. Normally, Warpath would drain your resources fast, but with this passive, you can keep spinning almost endlessly. Combine that with the Warrior's Fury, which pushes your melee damage and AoE into insane levels, and you've got a build that feels both powerful and smooth to play. Support skills like Devouring Orb and Anomaly will automatically fire off buffs while you're on the move, and abilities like Abyssal Echoes will add even more destructive power. The best part is that this build does not need uniques to get rolling, but if you manage to get items like the World Splitter, Siphon of the Anguish or the Anchor of Oblivion, then it shifts into a whole new gear, turning you into a late game juggernaut. In the endgame, the Warpath Void Knight will shine in both clearing packs and handling bosses. It's fast, tanky enough to survive tough encounters, and feels incredibly fluid. If you love melee builds that are easy to pick up but scale into something devastating, then you should try it out. And don't forget, for detailed guide and full build breakdown, click my link in the description. Next up we got Beer Beastmaster build, which is a setup that feels like stepping into the wild and unleashing the raw primal fury. This setup is all about the combo between the Beastmaster and his huge companion, the Bear. Together they will form a relentless duo. Your bear charges into the battle with massive swipes that tear through the armor, while you back it up with your own attacks and buffs. The bear isn't just a pet, it's the centerpiece of your damage. It crushes enemies with the bone-shattering melee hits and even causes earthquakes. The constant pressure keeps the enemies on the back foot, while you layer in supporting skills like the Warcry and the Maelstrom. You're going to be swiping to stack up the Berserker and the Feeding Frenzy, which boosts attack speed and the damage for both you and your bear. Warcry keeps your momentum going, and can also bail out you defensively against dangerous hits. Even your movement skill, the Fury Leap, ties into the primal rhythm, keeping you mobile while your bear holds the line. And the best part is that you don't need expensive gear to get this build running. It works great with basics, but once you add in uniques like the Gnawl's Tooth, Clever Solution or the Tyrant's Skull, then synergy between you and the bear reaches huge numbers. In endgame, this build will shine as a minion setup that actually feels aggressive and satisfying. Instead of sitting back while your minions do the work, you're going to be there in the fray, fighting side by side with your companion. And again, for detailed guide and full build breakdown, click my link in the description. Now let's go to the Judgement Paladin build. The setup is a combination of heavy damage over time and some of the strongest sustain you can find in the game. The core of this build is Judgement, which creates consecrated ground beneath your enemies. Anything standing in it gets seared by holy fire, while you're healed at the same time. The more layers are these zones, the higher your sustain climbs, so you're basically dealing damage while becoming harder and harder to kill. What makes the setup special is the balance between the offense and defense. Consecrated ground is deadly, but also healing you constantly. Add in the Holy Aura for passive buffs, Symbols of Hope for utility, and Healing Hands for the extra sustain and mobility, and you've got a paladin that can tank through almost anything. even in the hardcore, this build has the resilience to survive. The itemization option is even better. With uniques like the Rakan's Light or the Twisted Heart of the Onkeros, your Judgement paladin transforms into a powerhouse that dishes out serious DPS while still being very super tanky. In the endgame, the build excels at both clearing groups and handling bosses. If you love the archetype of a holy warrior who fights with both Fate and Flame, then the Judgement paladin build is a perfect choice. Next up, if you prefer something darker, then Abomination necromancer build might just be for you. This one is all about summoning a creature that's made from the corpses of your own minions. It's one of the most unique setups in the game, and it feels both twisted and incredibly powerful. You summon skeletons, mages, and the golems, then channel them into one massive abomination. This big monstrosity devours your army and becomes a single, unstoppable killing machine. From there, your job is to buff it with the Dreadshade, Bone Curse, and the Hour of Decay by turning it into a flesh and bone titan that tears through everything in its path. The playstyle feels risky, dangerous, but incredibly rewarding once you see it rip apart bosses like paper. Gear is also not required, but uniques like Evolution Sand, Phantom Griff, and the Tyrant Skull will push the build even further, by giving your Abomination even more power and survivability. The playstyle is a mix of a setup and payoff. You're carefully summoning, then consuming, and then unleashing your creature into the battle. Once it's active, you focus on keeping buffs rolling, and positioning yourself to support it. This is not a build for the faint of heart, because it's creepy, it's brutal, and it embodies the darkest side of the Necro. But if you want to play something that feels completely different from every other build in the game, then Abomination build is unforgettable. Next, switching gears, let's talk about one of the flashiest builds in Season 3, aka the Acid Flask Rogue. If you love fast gameplay, explosions everywhere, and non-stop action, then this one will keep you hooked. The concept is simple but brilliant. You drop explosive chops, which will trigger acid flasks by creating a chain reaction of fiery explosions that annihilate enemies. The synergy feels amazing. You're constantly throwing traps, dodging around with a smoke bomb, and watching enemies evaporate in a green and red flashes. What's great about this build is its flexibility. You can run it as a marksman using Cinder Strike to help you manage your mana early on, or you can even transform it into the falconer, which removes the need for a mana generator but requires high gear investment. Marksman feels smooth and reliable, while Falconer feels explosive and high risk, high reward. This build thrives on throwing damage, stacking resistance for more power, and leveraging utility skills for survivability. Smoke Bomb keeps you safe while boosting damage, and Decoy lets you redirect aggro when the pressure gets too high. Once geared, the Falconer version in particular feels controlled, with uniques like the Dragon Song for the Marksman or high tier affixes for the Falconer. This setup becomes a late game powerhouse. It's one of the most active builds, as you are always pressing buttons, always moving, and always detonating something. If you're looking for adrenaline pumping rogue gameplay, then the Acid Flask build is the way to go. Next, let's talk about something completely different, the Ballista Falconer build. Instead of fast and flashy, this build is all about setting up a deadly machine of destruction and letting it go to work. You summon Ballista turrets, and they will continuously fire bolts that rip through everything in the sight. The fun here comes from the mix of planning and mobility. You're constantly dropping ballistas, repositioning with the aerial assault or the smoke bomb, and letting your turrets blanket the battlefield in the arrows. Add in your falcon for the buffs and utility, and the entire screen becomes the killing zone. This is what we call it as the HP, or aka the zero health pool build. It doesn't care much about defense, as it's all about offense. You go glass cannon, and the payoff is incredible damage. Ballista will scale hard with the gear, and once you add in the items like the Ontario Stand or the Morning Frost, then your damage skyrockets to insane levels. The trade-off here is clear: you're fragile and mistakes can cost you, but in return you get insane numbers. Your gameplay is darting around, using decoy to buy yourself time, chaining smoke bombs for survivability, and watching your ballista melt bosses in seconds. If you like aggressive turret style that rewards fast thinking and smart positioning, then the Ballista Falconer is the way to go. It's one of the most unique builds in last Epoch, and definitely very OP in Season 3. And finally, we end up with the pure destruction, aka the Racing Strike Void Knight build. If Warpath was all about endless spinning and the steady pressure, then this build is all about the raw overwhelming burst damage. Every swing of a Racing Strike feels like it's deleting enemies in split seconds. The skill has a high mana cost, but again, thanks to the Void Well passive and the mana stacking, you can spam it continuously. Each strike lands with devastating void melee damage, melting bosses or clearing mobs with ease. Add in Devouring Orb and Anomaly for constant buffs, and you've got one of the hardest hitting melee builds in the game. This setup does require Ward Splitter to really shine, but once you have it, the damage output is insane. Supporting gear like the Siphon of the Anguish and the Archer of the Oblivion will push it even further, making you a wrecking ball of the void energy. Gameplay wise, it feels deliberate but powerful. You're moving with the healing hands, keeping the buffs active, and slamming down a Racing Strike whenever enemies appear. The impact of each hit is so satisfying that it's less about constant pressure and more about obliterating everything in the sight with the massive bursts. If you want a melee build that is devastating and rewarding every time you swing, then a Racing Strike Void Knight is unmatched. It's the perfect build for a melee player. And like per usual, if you're interested in detailed guide and the full build breakdown, then click my link in the description.